What's up, everybody? We are live here at the Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and coronavirus quarantine home over at fakepigskin.com. You know me as your host, Kyle, Notorious KRO. With me once again, it's Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
What's up, Kyle? I'm excited to have Mr. Florio here to go over some exciting prospects and for the hopeful 2020 NFL season.
Yeah, I wanted to bring somebody on here who could actually drop some knowledge instead of us bozos just talking out of our ass half the time. So we'll give this a few minutes. Let everybody come on in. I don't know if you guys. I'm sure everybody's seen it by now, but they're relaunching Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, and I literally couldn't be more excited. I don't know how many hours I played. Brian, I see you shaking your head. Did you grow up playing that game as well?
Yeah, I wasn't a skater, like actual skating, but that video game got multiple overnighters throughout the summers of being out of school. So yes, I'm excited for that.
Oh yeah, dude. I used to. There was a computer store that had like a demo, and I'd go play it for like an hour a day just because it was like incredible. And then once I finally got it, I was like, oh, I was going crazy. What about you, Michael? You a Tony Hawk Pro Skater guy?
I was more of a Dave Neer BMX guy.
That's legit. That was my game. That was so good.
That was what I played more of. I did have like Tony Hawk. This is way back. I think I had it for like Game Boy Advance or something like that. So,
Nice.
Oh man,
and
Nice.
I haven't played it since. But I mean, I'd be excited to try it now.
Yeah, I'm for sure excited. I'm a little curious to see how aggressive they're going to get with like the reboot. If it's just more like graphics and getting on the new console, if they're gonna try and get a little crazy. But
I can't tell you a professional skateboarder currently.
Hey, me either. But I was killing it with Chad Muska and Rodney Mullen, and I was getting all those videotapes, and I was just absolutely destroying that game. I cannot wait for September. But another thing that comes in September, we fingers crossed, anyways. We got fantasy football. And we'll have NFL, maybe in empty stadiums. So I'm not really sure. Michael, how are you kind of baking in the idea of limited training camp, maybe no OTAs, into kind of how you're thinking about this season? Do you want more like consistency from year to year? Are you okay with players making jumps to new teams? Kind of where is your head at when it comes to kind of where we're at right now?
I think the biggest concern for me is teams with new offensive coordinators or head coaches. Like if you're implementing a new offensive system and you're getting less time than normal to implement it, I know like players can say they're studying the playbook and they get it. And I'm forgetting which coach it was, but one coach actually, I think Cliff Kingsbury said yesterday, he was like, yeah, guys on Zoom could say, got it, coach, over and over again. I don't know if that's true until I see them on the field.
Yeah.
So that to me is a little bit of concern. I have concern too with some of the later rookies, not the, like Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jonathan Taylor. I'm not worried about those guys. Maybe it takes them a week or two longer than normal to get the full allotment of their work, but yeah. I'm not scared off of those guys. The lower rookies, the guys who aren't taken with a premium pick, who aren't in the, the obvious guys in this system's team's game plan this year, those are the rookies I'm worrying about too.
Yeah, no, and that's a legit concern. And obviously running backs in general, Brian, like it's a lot easier for them to come in, transition. They run the same kind of different, run plays where receivers are gonna have to work on that timing, work on that press coverage with an NFL DB as opposed to a college DB. So there is a lot to think about in terms of maybe we're, just a lot less aggressive on actually drafting rookies. And then just hoping if if they happen to pop, that we get them off the waiver wire and go that route.
Yeah, all things being equal, if we were coming into a regular season, a guy like Joe Burrow being picked number 1 overall, loaded with talent on the outside, and with Joe Mixon, he'd be going probably as like a premium pick as a back end QB1 with the potential of him, being able to put up some good numbers with them always losing games. But there's an increased risk, especially this season, with him not being able to get onto the field and kind of get familiar with his receivers and how they run their routes and the timing and all that kind of stuff. But kind of like Michael said too, It's more so the guys that were picked with later picks who are kind of battling for playing time that are going to be a lot more difficult to kind of foresee what their production is going to be this season.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting even for some of the guys we saw last year to see kind of how they look in year two. Like, a N'Keal Harry is a perfect example of a guy that if he had a full offseason to work with Jarrett Stidham and build kind of back to what we thought of him coming out his rookie year, maybe we're a little more optimistic about him. But now that he's coming in, not as much offseason time, not as much prep time, there's a few more question marks there. So it's definitely something that until we get clarification, we won't really know. But it's something I'm definitely trying to bake into my rankings and kind of where I am right now, drafting best balls and drafting some of those kind of leagues. Before we dive into Florio's Fantasy 5, we've got 5 names that he is going to be pounding the table for this year. Players that Brian and I are both very excited about because there's some names that definitely pique our interest as well. I want to talk about the Eagles backfield. Michael, why does Doug Peterson hate Miles Sanders? I mean, last year he just kept going to different names. Now they're saying Carlos Hyde is potentially going to land there. There was some LaShawn McCoy potential return to Philadelphia news. I think Boston Scott's still going to be involved. Like, everybody wants Miles Sanders to be the guy, and people are starting to draft him in Dynasty. I mean, I have him in a couple leagues. I'm getting bombarded with trade offers, and now it seems like, at least for this year, Peterson's kind of wanting to get somebody else to fill that Jordan Howard role.
Yeah, I don't even think it's for this year. I think it's for Peterson's life, right? This is the offense, how he has operated the Eagles offense since he has taken over. It's never been one workhorse running back. And we were hoping that changes because he invested a second-round pick in Miles Sanders. And I still think I don't think it's going to be as big. Like Carlos Hyde coming in, I don't think it's going to be as big of an impact as on him last year. I think Miles Sanders is the lead back first and foremost. But what I was saying even before this Carlos Hyde rumor is I think people were sleeping on Boston Scott and what his role was going to be. Like, Boston Scott was more than serviceable for them last year when he had to be used. And I was not sold that Doug Peterson was going to let Miles Sanders get 80% of the snaps and dominate the touches. I think he will be that lead back there. I think he will see 15 plus touches every week, but probably not going to eclipse 20 too often because I think there'll be Boston Scott or Carlos Hyde or I don't know, a sleeper like a Devonta Freeman coming in there. I think they will bring in another back to pair with Miles Sanders.
Yeah, and I think that's a completely logical expectation, and hopefully pumps the brakes a little bit on the Miles Sanders hype train, even if it just makes him a little more easily attainable in redraft leagues. All right, Brian, should we just dive in and hit these names because there's some good ones. And we'll start with Mr. Austin Eckler, Chargers running back. Brian, this is a guy we've debated a few times. Michael, I guess, where are you at with Eckler, and why are you so excited about him for this season?
First of all, the ticker on the bottom is awesome. I don't know if you guys saw my reaction. That's really cool. It's like I just drafted him. I feel awesome about it. Why I love Austin Eckler is if you look at any metric at all, he is an absolute stud. Missed tackles forced, yards after contact. He's, I think, unquestionably one of the best route running and pass catching running backs. I'll put him up there with Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara. And he reminds me a lot of Alvin Kamara, actually. Not necessarily, he may not have the size that Kamara has, but my whole take with Eckler is I think they're going to operate the offense and use him in a very similar role to Austin Eckler. And what I mean by that is I think he's going to dominate any pass catching usage for their running backs there. He's going to dominate their routes, their targets, their receptions, all of that. And then I think he's going to, at the worst, split the running the carries. I think it'll be him and Josh Kelly. I think Josh Kelly was brought in to kind of play that hammer role to what Mark Ingram and Latavius Murray have played with Alvin Kamara. And I do understand that losing Phillip Rivers is huge because no quarterback threw to running backs more than Phillip Rivers last year. He is captain check down, and he is great at doing so. But I also think this is an offense ran by Anthony Lynn. He is going to get the running backs very, very, very heavily involved. He always has done so. I think Tyrod Taylor running the option with Austin Eckler is going to be so much fun. And maybe he won't have, the near 100 catches he had last year, but I don't think they're suddenly going to stop throwing him the ball, and Tyrod is not going to throw him the ball. Like, I still think Austin Eckler can get you, 75 plus catches. And I think he's going to get even more. He was the RB4 last year, averaging less than 40 rushing yards per game. Like, he had 224 touches last year. I don't see any way he has any less this year.
Yeah, and that so I guess my concern is do we just pencil in Tyrod as a starter? Brian, I know you're a lot more optimistic than I am. I have a feeling we may see Justin Herbert. Yeah, you've been down that road. I know he ran your Bills to the playoffs, and I definitely see a world where he starts all 16 games and this Chargers team is good. But I think know
it's very possible.
And I think there's also a road where the Chargers know that Justin Herbert is their future, and they want to find out if he's the real deal, because there's an outside chance that they're terrible again, and they might be in the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. So, I mean, we could be in for a Josh Rosen, Dwayne Haskins. Like, let's see what this guy has with this offense. But there's so many pieces there that you want to be excited about this offense. Just every time I want to go down that road, I have to pull myself back a little bit, knowing there's a huge question mark under center, Brian.
Yeah, we've talked about this multiple times, and I've been spewing this for the last 3 episodes about how I really feel that Tyrod is going to be the guy probably for the majority of this season. And kind of, we alluded to this when we're talking about total team wins and that division in particular, is that the 3 teams after the Chiefs are all going to be vying for similar records. They're all going to be around 500. And, one of them, at least one of them, I think is going to get into the playoffs. And Tyrod is easily a 500 quarterback with a team that's built with a great defense. He has good weapons. Austin Eckler is, like Michael alluded to, he's a legit running back. He's an Alvin Kamara, clone, just like he said, maybe not as big or as powerful and kind of breaking tackles. But the one worry I would have with Eckler in fantasy this year is that I do see them going more towards that Bills offense that Lynn ran with Taylor. But I do see them kind of leaning more heavily on the downhill running and less likely on pounding Eckler to kind of keep him healthy, knowing that he's probably going to be their most valuable asset on offense.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where Justin Jackson or Josh Kelly, or probably both, are going to see that work on that first and second down. But when the Chargers are down, when they need to throw the ball, when they need pass protection, Eckler will be out there. I guess, Michael, what do you think the floor is for Eckler targets? Do you think it's 70, 75 that you're comfortable there? Or do you think there's a world where we see, 50, 55, kind of like we saw in 2018?
No, I think we were seeing that number in 2018 because Melvin Gordon was still racking up 50 catches a year. So, yeah. I mean, they were still throwing the ball to the running backs a lot. It just, we didn't know Eckler was Eckler yet. He was a D2 college player. Let's not forget that. And I know it's D2, but this guy also was, getting well over 200 carries every single season in college. So I'm not of the mindset that he can handle a workload. I think we like to pigeonhole running backs who play the game like Austin Eckler and say, oh, he can't be a lead back. But as for targets, I pulled up LaShawn McCoy's. He had 57 in 2016 with Taylor and then 77 in 2017. And I think Eckler is going to be an even bigger part of the offense than McCoy was. So I think 70, 75, I would set that as the floor.
Yeah. I got a nice comment in the chat from Matthew. I'm kind of with you, Matthew, in terms of Justin Herbert is going to put butts in the seats over Tyrod, but they're also not really paying a lot to be in the stadium. So they may give it a few games, see how it goes. If they're rolling and they look good and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Hunter Henry and Austin Eckler are going off, they'll leave Tyrod in. But if the wheels aren't turning, if the offense isn't rolling like they expect, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a quick hook or, unfortunately, like we saw during his time in Cleveland, an injury could take him out pretty quickly too. And they go to the rookie.
I'm not sure any player could put butts in the seats for the Chargers. they struggle every year, but I do think it all depends on record. Like if they start off and they're playing and they're in the race and Tyrod is keeping them in the race, I don't think they pull a Nate Peterman type 2017 scenario. I think they'll stick with Tyrod if he has them in the hunt. If they're losing games, I think then we see the switch.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's the jerseys that they have isn't getting anybody in the seats. Both those teams went to New Jersey, and they're both really, really bad.
Go powder blue all the time.
I don't understand why you have good thing and you get rid of it for these Oregon knockoffs. I don't know. We'll see.
Being a San Diego native, although I am not a Chargers fan, most people down here feel that it's like a slap in the face that they kind of kept to the traditional San Diego Chargers colors and the powder blue stuff. And we all wish down here they would have just gotten rid of that.
Yeah,
you don't like the powder blues?
Oh no, I like the powder blues, and San Diego people love the powder blues, but they're not San Diego's team anymore.
Yeah.
Soon enough.
Let's play a couple this guy or that guys with Austin Eckler. I want to see where you guys are at, because if you're drafting best balls, if you're drafting, thinking about redraft, a lot of these names are going in the same range. So Austin Eckler, Brian, or Aaron Jones?
Oh man, I'd probably just go Aaron Jones even though I do see some touchdown regression. I like a team led by Aaron Rodgers over Tyrod or Justin Herbert.
What about you, Michael?
That's an easy one for me, Austin Eckler.
Woo, yeah.
I'm low on Jones this year. I'm high on Eckler and I'm low on Jones.
I feel like the Packers are a team that I'm a little. I don't know. I feel like there's I don't know if it's going to be weird just because of the whole Jordan Love and NFL draft stuff. If they kind of did a lot with Aaron Jones and he had a lot of touchdowns, and touchdown regression is a real thing, and then all of a sudden his numbers come back. I think I'm with you, especially any sort of half or full PPR. I'm definitely going Eckler. What about Miles Sanders, Brian?
I would probably go with Eckler just because of Peterson's lack of his inability to kind of commit to one guy. So it would probably be Eckler, knowing his receiving floor and how we saw Boston Scott come on and tear it up as the receiving threat for Philly down the stretch.
Michael, you staying with Eckler?
Yeah, this one is closer to me. I have Sanders higher than I do Aaron Jones, but I'm still going with Eckler. This one is very close. I think I have them like a spot or two apart in my rankings, but we're now in the range where all the obvious workhorse backs are gone. So I'm going to go with the most efficient running back in football last year. I'm going to go with Austin Eckler.
Yeah, Eckler. I love Miles Sanders, and if I'm looking for a guy who could be, the best running back or near the top, I definitely go Sanders. But Eckler is really appealing. Brian, are you sure that you're not in the chat as Matthew right now? Because
positive.
There's a Jay Sternberger reference, and you're literally the only person that is.
Yeah, baby.
I'm not convinced it's not you.
I promise. I'll show my hand.
Michael, would you draft Leonard Fournette, DeAndre Swift, or Kenyan Drake over Austin Eckler?
I would not draft Leonard Fournette, and that is one I've done a complete 180 on in the last month or so. If he's on the team come August and he's going to get all the work, I may switch my answer there. But as of now, I'm going to go with Austin Eckler. Kenyan Drake is really close in standard or even half PPR. I would go with Drake because I think he is the safe bet to get some more touchdowns there. And I think in standard, touchdowns are what you care about. But in PPR, I'm going Austin Eckler. And then who is the third back?
DeAndre Swift.
Oh, I'm taking Eckler over Swift in any format there.
Yeah, and I'm pulling this all off of MFL ADP. These are all guys going in the same range. Brian, what about you? Fournette, Swift, or Drake? Are you taking any of those guys over Austin Eckler?
I'd probably take Drake right now. Although I was flippy floppy on him last year. I bit the bullet with him a couple years ago, so I was. I have been burnt too many times with Drake, but I just think that Cardinals offense is ready to explode this year, and I think pretty much the touchdown upside is just going to be overwhelming for a Drake. The other two, Fournette scares me just with their offense is really not efficient. So we could see another 5-6 touchdowns out of him. And if he's likely to lose some of those receptions that he got to Chris Thompson. So his value gets lessened. And DeAndre Swift, he's not even in the conversation.
Yeah. Fournette's interesting for me. I think Michael nailed it perfectly. If we get clarity that he's their guy, he's definitely somebody that I'd be a lot more comfortable taking. But at this point, like he could end up anywhere. I have no idea what to expect from him. You guys are more optimistic on Kenyan Drake than I am. I really want to get excited because I think there is a lot of potential, Brian. Like you mentioned, in that offense, there's so much room for explosion and him just being awesome and being involved in the passing game and kind of being a David Johnson light. But I can't quite get there right now. A guy that I can get there though, Mr. Allen Robinson. This guy is getting slept on, and I think another monster season, obviously coming off of basically 100 catches, over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. Florio, talk to me about him and why you're so excited about him.
Oh, I love Allen Robinson. He is probably my favorite wide receiver target so far this season. And the reason is because last year he was the wide receiver 7 in PPR. He had the 3rd most targets of all wide receivers. And people laugh when you say he's a wide receiver 1. Like, this guy already was a wide receiver 1 last year. I think Nick Foles will start the majority of games. I'm not sure if he'll start week 1 because I think Ryan Pace wants to give Mitch Trubisky every last opportunity. But I think Nick Foles quickly does start, and he will be the best quarterback that Allen Robinson has ever played with. And then outside of Anthony Miller, who is really going to take targets away from Allen Robinson? Tariq Cohen. I think we're going to see less of Tariq Cohen this year than we did last year. And then I don't think Jimmy Graham is going to do anything. Cole Kmet, a rookie tight end, I'm not worrying about him coming in and taking any targets away. I think Allen Robinson is going to be in the top 5 in targets again, and I think he's going to be top 10 wide receiver. I have him ranked as my wide receiver 7, actually, and I love it because I'll take guys that I have lower than him ahead of him because you could get him in round 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I mean, he's been a fantasy monster with Trubisky and Blake Bortles. If he can do that, he can do it with Nick Foles. I mean, he's basically becoming Larry Fitzgerald 2.0, where he's just a monster with like nothing at quarterback. And I to your point, like outside of Anthony Miller, like there's not really anybody who's going to steal a ton of targets. Brian, I mean, even if it is Mitchell Trubisky for a couple games, he proved last year that he could be good enough to make Allen Robinson a viable fantasy option. So I think we're 3 for 3 check boxes on A-Rob.
Yeah, for sure. Let's not also mention that even with Mitchell Trubisky last year, there was much more competition for targets as well. And now those guys are all gone with old man Jimmy Graham, who can only run straight, and the rookie Kmet at tight end. So.
And Ted Ginn's out there running streaks, and he might just, for fantasy, he's obviously useless, but for the offense, he might be good to kind of open things up and just make more room for Robinson.
Really good point. I didn't even consider the 10 gig factor in real life, and yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we get excited about those burners that could catch 80-yard touchdowns, but the John Rosses, they open up a lot for their complementary receivers. So just something to think about for sure. Guys going in the similar range as Allen Robinson, DK Metcalf, Stephon Diggs, Cortland Sutton, and Cooper Kupp. Brian, if you're drafting, are you taking any of those 4 receivers over Allen Robinson?
I think if we're talking about PPR, I might consider taking Cooper Kupp. Just I feel like he's going to see an uptick in production and volume this season. Yeah. But if we're talking any other format, I don't think any of those guys offer the upside that Allen Robinson does.
Michael, what about you?
Yeah, I have A-Rob over all of those guys. It's really the elite wide receivers and then A-Rob for me in my rankings. Of all those names, I think they all deserve to be going around each other except for Stephon Diggs. I am worried about Diggs with the Bills.
Yeah, and I think you're obviously a Bills fan. You're heavily invested in that team. I want to be excited because he's such a good route runner. He does so much as a pass catcher, but I just with that offense and with Josh Allen, like you watch this team, like what can we reasonably expect out of Diggs that like Minnesota wasn't providing?
I think he's going to have a very similar season to last year. Like, he was not happy that the Vikings were running the ball so much. The Bills were right next to them in run percentage. Like, this is a team that is going to run a lot, and they want to rely on that defense. Plus, I don't think people realize that the Bills have more weapons than the Vikings did because they still have John Brown and Cole Beasley, who each had over 100 targets last year. They've Dawson Knox, who's an up-and-coming athletic tight end. They have, and then Zach Moss and Devin Singletary coming out of the backfield, who will probably get a couple of targets per game. So I think Diggs will help Josh Allen and the Bills offense more than he will fantasy teams. Like, I think he was brought in because he's one of the best deep ball wide receivers in the game, and that is where Allen struggled so much. He's a great route runner with a big catch radius. He's going to help. He'll get open, and Allen could just put the ball in his area, and he'll catch it. So I think that'll help Allen, but I think there's a lot of mouths to feed there. I think it'll be inconsistent because Allen is going to miss him a lot too. I love Josh Allen, but he's going to miss Diggs a good amount. And I think it's going to be kind of up and down like it was for last season for Diggs. So it's not someone that I'm totally interested in for fantasy.
Yeah, Diggs is someone I'd be way more interested in best ball just because I don't know when those games are going to come because there is going to be a couple games where he has like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns and, you know, helps you win a week. But there's also going to be 3 weeks where he has 3 total catches for 27 yards. And you're like, why am I starting this guy every week? And that's the week you bench him and the week he goes off. So I'm 100% with you. I take A-Rob over all the receivers not named Cooper Kupp. I'm still optimistic on Cooper Kupp. Like this Rams offense completely fell off when he got hurt last year. And he's so important for what they do. He's so many red zone targets. And now Brandon Cooks is out of the way. So it's just Robert Woods and the tight ends. So I'm crazy optimistic on what Kupp can be. Let's keep this gravy train rolling and talk about a guy Brian and I are both very excited about. And that's Matthew Stafford. This guy was absolutely rolling last year, was on pace for 5,000, almost basically 5,000 yards and 38 touchdowns. We get another year of TJ Hawkinson. They add DeAndre Swift. Michael, this is like the perfect, I'm going to wait on quarterback, take him, and be ecstatic with what my position looks like.
Yeah, I mean, this might be considered a hot take by some, but, like, I would much rather Matt Stafford than Aaron Rodgers in fantasy this year. Like, wow. Stafford's in my top 12, and Aaron Rodgers is not. Stafford was a different quarterback last year. Like, I've always been a Stafford fan back to the days where he had Calvin Johnson. Like, that was when I first started playing fantasy, and they became my favorite QB wide receiver duo. And Stafford had changed over the years, right? Like, he became more of a check down back. Their top weapons were Theo Riddick out of the backfield and slot receivers, you know, and it was a dink and dunk style offense, and it just didn't really suit him. It didn't translate too much fantasy success. But last season, he became a much more of a down the field thrower, and he was up there with Jameis Winston for most air yards per throw. And he has like field stretchers in Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay, and like you said, another year of TJ Hawkinson, 2 good pass-catching running backs out of the backfield in Johnson and Swift. So I think the weapons, the fact that he's going to be throwing the ball down the field more to Golladay and Jones he's going to connect on some of those, and then it's going to open up more of that short yardage stuff near the line of scrimmage, which is where Danny Amendola and Hawkinson and those RBs, they can get those short catches and lots of yak after because the defense is worried about those guys burning on the field. I think Matt Stafford, people don't realize he was a top 5 quarterback in fantasy before he got hurt last year. And it's just going completely overlooked. The back injury is my only concern.
Yep. And that's what the chat's saying right now. And in most leagues, that's not going to be an issue because if you take Stafford and he just doesn't look good, he's not able to get where he needs to be, you're able to punt and go get somebody else off the waiver wire. Obviously in deeper leagues, in super flex leagues, it's a different story. But I'm looking at ADP, and right now Stafford is QB 15. Like after him, Ryan Tannehill, Jared Goff, Ben Roethlisberger, Kirk Cousins, Phillip Rivers. Like, you could take any of those guys. One of them will be sitting on your waiver wire after week 2, after week 3, and you could pick someone else up and roll with them if the Stafford train isn't rolling, but the potential, the ceiling, that's like Brian, why we like taking. Obviously, we like waiting on quarterback to get the value, but we go for guys that have the ceiling, that have the upside, and if it doesn't hit, then you go on to the next guy and you don't really worry about it. But if it does, you have a guy who last year was producing top 5 numbers at the position, in an offense that is better, that even as much as Matt Patricia makes us shake our head and we don't know exactly what's going on with Carry On and Swift in terms of timeshare, Stafford's the guy that should be able to soak up all the exposure to every position and just kind of let it roll.
Yeah, I mean, Stafford is like my favorite wait on quarterback guy, as I am normally one of the last person to draft the position, just because I like to build up, the skill position players. That way, if he does wind up not working, you've already kind of built that base for your team that you're getting consistent numbers out of the running backs and the wide receivers. And quarterback, the separation of points on a weekly basis is not from Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, but after them, you're not seeing that big of a differential. So it's really not worth investing those high picks. And Stafford with Galladay, who is somebody I love extremely this year as a guy who could even take the next step as being one of those upper echelon wide receivers. And with Hawkinson hopefully fully healthy, Deandre Swift added to the backfield, who is a much better option than the other scrubs they were running out there after Carry On got hurt last year. I'm with you guys. Like, Stafford is my favorite. He's this year's Jameis Winston for me, somebody that I will be looking to get on pretty much every single one of my fantasy rosters.
Yeah, hopefully we get the 5,000 yards and the 30 touchdowns, but sans the 30 picks. Yeah, I'm good without those.
But even with the 30 picks, he was averaging like close to 20 a game.
He had a monster season. All right, let's keep this gravy train rolling, and let's talk about Stephon Diggs' former teammate. Bear with me, Adam Thielen. Florio, this is where I'm gonna give the floor to you, because I want to be excited about Adam Thielen this year, but I'm something's holding me back. I don't know if it was the injury last year or what, but so talk to me about him and your optimism there.
Yeah, I don't think people realize or really remember what Adam Thielen was before the hamstring. At least that's what it feels like to me, because Adam Thielen before the hamstring injury was a wide receiver 1. And last year, I was pounding the table before he got hurt to sell him because his targets were down and his receptions were down, but he was still putting up big fantasy numbers because of the touchdowns, and I thought touchdown regression would hit, and then he got hurt. But if you look at what he did from 2018 through week 6 of last year when he suffered that hamstring injury, and he was never the same after that hamstring injury. He tried to come back multiple times, ran like less than 10 routes and had to miss multiple games again. To me, I think after that hamstring injury, you throw it all away. But in that span, up until that hamstring injury for the last year and a half, he was averaging 18.49 fantasy points per game. The only wide receivers with more in that stretch were Michael Thomas, Antonio Brown, Devontae Adams, D-Hop, Julio Jones, and Tyreek Hill, also known as the 6 best wide receivers in fantasy football in football in that span. So Adam Thielen being right behind those guys, he's not that talented, but for fantasy, it's been plenty productive. And it's a very small, I think, 3-game sample size. But in the last 3 seasons, without Stephon Diggs, his targets jumped from 8 per game to almost 11 per game. And now there's no Diggs. I don't think Justin Jefferson and those tight ends are going to get, all of Diggs' 94 targets. Like, I think you could sprinkle a lot of that onto Adam Thielen. I think he's going to be a target monster. He's more a guy like in PPR, but in PPR leagues, I think he's going to be a steal.
Yeah, and Roto World's Eden Hartitz was tweeting today about Thielen. He had no missed games from 14 to 18. He was the wide receiver 9 in PPR in 17, wide receiver 7 in 18. So right there with you. Also, Gary Kubiak's wide receiver 1 has averaged 138 targets. And Brian, I know we talked with Jared Smola about kind of what that offense may look like. Now that it's kind of Kubiak's offense, but Smola was thinking that's kind of what it was last year, and we saw, there won't be a lot of changeover, which for a team that, we're going to be looking for consistency, and a team that has a lot of carryover. The Vikings are definitely that. There's not a lot of change on that side of the ball. And if Kubiak's going to run basically the same offense, I don't think there's any reason to fret. I think part of my hesitation is I owned Thielen in a couple leagues last year and had to deal with I started him. He ran 10 routes. He's out of the game. Now I'm getting goose egged and out of the playoffs. So that's probably the likely scenario that is holding me back, because he's going to be a guy I think that's going to provide value, because I think a lot of people are going to be remembering getting burned.
It's always the best to get a guy after, especially like an injury, that freak injury, like a hamstring. He pulled it. That lingers, but I don't worry about it lingering into this season. I think that's the opposite. Like Juju is also a guy that I love buying, because fresh in everyone's mind is the stinker from last year. So you get rid of that now, and you get into, where he could still be where we thought he was last year. So, and he's a value.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers in general, and Brian, we were kind of talking about this. I think last year you have to kind of throw it out the window. Like, if they don't get something from the quarterback play, then obviously last year's stats and stuff should carry over. But if they get a full Big Ben or Cam or something at quarterback, I think everything kind of gets all systems go, and James Conner and Juju and James Washington, Deontay Johnson, they're all taken off, and they're all incredibly interesting for fantasy.
With the Steelers, real quick, I think even a 70% Ben Roethlisberger is a huge upgrade over Hodges and Mason Rudolph, just with his ability to get the ball down the field. As long as it's more so his elbows healthy, and he's just the
frozen, but that's good.
I wish Winston took that offer, man.
Oh, I had been talking about Winston like being the guy, and he would have been perfect for that offense. Like, he's Big Ben
2.0.
Yeah. Welcome back, Brian.
Hi.
You froze into history, but you're back. Let's talk about the next.
It's got to be the wife streaming some show on Netflix.
Oh, I'm sure. Now. I'm sure she's watching Outer Banks on Netflix right now. On to the last guy of the Fantasy Five, and that's Mr. Jonathan Taylor. Brian, obviously, we've talked a lot about Jonathan Taylor. We're both incredibly excited about him as a player. But Florio, talk to me about him and kind of your expectation in year one, knowing that Marlon Mack, at least for now, is still there.
Yeah, I think Jonathan Taylor throws, I'll say weeks 5 or 6, because maybe it takes a week or two longer with, training camp potentially getting delayed or anything and having a slower start for rookies. But I think Jonathan Taylor is quickly going to throw Marlon Mack aside. This is a Colts team who is in clear win now mode. Like, they have a lot of talent all around on the offensive line, all around on their defense. And they went out and they paid Phillip Rivers, who clearly has a year or two maybe left, if he even has that left. And then they traded up in the second round to get Jonathan Taylor. I think they did that for a reason. I had him as the best running back, not the best overall back, because I really like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I thought Jonathan Taylor was the best on-the-ground running back in football, in college football coming into this draft. And I think he will throw Mack aside, because I went back and I looked at every running back in the last 5 years drafted in the first 2 rounds. I threw out Darius Geis because he tore his ACL and didn't play. But of the backs that stayed healthy, they averaged 211 touches in their first season. And if you throw away 2018, which had Ronald Jones and Rashad Penny just dragging that number down, it also throws away Saquon, so it throws a huge amount of touches away. They averaged 230 touches in that first season. So I think Jonathan Taylor, early on, the first month or so, he's going to probably let you down a little bit. But after that, I think he has league-winning upside running behind that offensive line. And let's not forget, too, I know 26 catches, career high in college, doesn't look like a whole lot. But Melvin Gordon came out of Wisconsin, same program, with less than 30 career catches. And then with Phillip Rivers, had 2 seasons of over 50-plus catches, because just being on the field with Phillip Rivers, Jonathan Taylor could fall backwards into 20-plus catches this year. So I think I think Jonathan Taylor, once he gets Mac aside, week 5 or 6 maybe, I think he will take off and has league-winning upside after that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a lot more optimistic on Jonathan Taylor than I thought I was going to be coming in. I'm working on my projections right now. I have him for 230 attempts for over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. I'm with you on the receptions. I think that is very much in the cards. We've seen when he had the opportunity, he knows how to catch the ball. He knows how to get if they can get him the ball in space. I think he's going to be absolutely incredible doing that. I think 20 or 30 catches is very reasonable this year. I do wonder about the Nyheim Hines factor, though, Brian, and what he may, how much involvement he may have, and if he kind of gets like an Austin Eckler light role and ends up actually kind of being more annoying than we kind of hope he will be. In PPR, he'll be interesting and obviously reliable, but if he's a guy that gets maybe 70 or 80 targets instead of like 40 or 50, that really lowers the floor of what Jonathan Taylor can do as a pass catcher.
Yeah, I'm right with you guys. I love Jonathan Taylor, and I was just like Michael. I thought he was the best runner in the draft and somebody who kind of fits the Colts scheme perfectly. One of the things that for me, like, I'm a little worried about how his draft price is going to just continue to increase as we get closer to the season. And I don't know if I'd be willing to like select him as maybe, the 14th or 15th guy off the board if he's like skyrocketed that far, with talk of him getting, if Michael posts these numbers of the average carries of rookies picked in the first and second rounds, like, you're looking at 1,000 yards easy. And I do think that Mac will still provide like some resistance to Taylor taking over the majority of touches, especially in the early on. But I don't think they're just going to toss him aside. I think he's going to be well utilized. I think we're going to see a pretty good rotation. I do like Taylor's receiving threat. We've all kind of talked about it, and you saw his numbers increase each year at Wisconsin, to where they started to get him more involved in the passing game. And the Colts are going to be leaning on the shotgun a lot with Phillip Rivers and his bum knees. So, I like him. I'm just worried about the draft price come draft day, getting closer to the season.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fair. Like right now, I pulled up a couple ADPs. I pulled up Best Ball 10's ADP from Fanball, and I pulled up my Fantasy League ADP. Over on Fanball, he's running back 17, going after Fournette, after Todd Gurley, right before Melvin Gord, Le'Veon Bell. I like him a lot in that range if he's a third-round pick. Over on MFL, he's going as RB12 in front of Austin Eckler, in front of Fournette, in front of Kenyan Drake.
That I didn't do.
See, yeah, and so that's that. I think that, to your point, Brian, is come July and August, I feel like we might be a little more, especially depending on what the news is coming out. If there's Marlon Mack doesn't look quite as good, he's still kind of banged up from last year. I think Jonathan Taylor could be kind of in that late first, early second round range, and that's too rich for my blood. But if we're starting to talk about kind of getting back towards the third and maybe even mid to late third, I'm going to be a lot more optimistic at buying at that point.
Yeah, I think he would fit the mold as somebody who goes wide receiver, and then is looking for that value at running back that late. Yeah. I think he fits there. But if he's going to be like your number one, and you're the Patrick Mahomes drafter, I'm not banking on him being able to put up total complete RB1 numbers.
Yeah.
It's a good point though about the price, because RB12, that's even higher than I have him as my RB17, I believe. So I have him ahead of a lot of the guys that you mentioned in that first site, and then on the second side, I was like, oh, I have him behind all these guys.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't love him as much as I thought, but I do love him. I see him going a lot in like the third round, and I love him at that price. There's a low end RB2. I think there's pure upside in that type of pick. But yeah, if he climbs to RB12, I might have to go back and edit this one out.
Yeah, no, I definitely I think he has that RB1, even top half of the RB1 upside if everything plays out right. If everything doesn't play out quite like we expect, I think, a solid RB2 is what you're getting. So I'd really like to pay that price and be able to get the extra value where I don't need him to be a top 7, 8, 9, 10 running back, where if you're buying him at the end of the first or even mid-second, you really need that, elite number one guy, and you need him to take over early. And behind that offensive line, it's absolutely there, but we'll see what the Marlon Mack experience looks like this year, and how much they really use him, and if it's more of a 40-40 with Hines getting the rest of the work, it could be kind of frustrating. So maybe Jonathan Taylor becomes the guy in week 3, week 4 that we're telling people to go trade for, because everything's kind of turning his way, and whoever currently owns him is probably getting a little frustrated. Michael, this was awesome. Please tell everybody where they can follow you on Twitter, where they can read all your work, where they can check out everything you're doing, because you are a busy guy even during quarantine.
Thank you. They can follow me at Michael F. Florio on Twitter. That's the best place to get all my work kind of in one spot. I do work for NFL Fantasy for Rotoballer, and I co-host their weekend shows on Sirius XM, and then you can also catch some of my work over at Fantrax. So yeah, a lot of different places. I'm a little bit everywhere.
Yeah, like a few logs and a bunch of fires, but cranking out awesome work. And thanks for joining us once again. And we'll have to have you back on to talk some more, as hopefully a season's approaching.
Definitely, man. This was a ton of fun. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Absolutely. For Brian Twining,
thank you.
I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Peace.